Come on, spend that dirty, sexy money on me, on me, on me. You got to pull up. If you wanna do it freaky. 24/7, no, 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 see. Come on, put that dirty, sexy money on me, on me, on me. You got to pull up.
Hi, we're going to present you the European inflation market primer. But first, what is inflation? Inflation is a quantitative measure of the rate at which the average price level of a basket of selected goods and services in an economy increases over a period of time. Often expressed as a percentage, inflation indicates a decrease in the purchasing power of a nation's currency. For example, if you do supermarket shopping today and pay 100 euros, and 1 month later you buy the same products and pay 105 euros, it's because inflation increased at 5% more. How did that happen? There is inflation when the country prints more money, when costs increase, or when demand increases and supply remains the same or fall. The seasonality is an impact of that. Inflation in January and July is always negative because of discount period. All of that leads to a decrease of purchasing power and benefits. The central banks then take the necessary measure to keep inflation within the permissible limits and keep the economy running smoothly. The target is 2% of inflation, but sometimes it takes time or isn't enough. How can you protect against inflation? We're going to present you here index-linked bonds and inflation swaps.
And now, what is an inflation-linked bond? Index-linked bonds are bonds in which payment of interest income on the principal is related to a specific index. In particular, inflation-linked bonds are a particular type of bond that revalues both coupons and principal at the maturity against a given price index. In this way, the coupon yield and any positive difference between the purchase price and the redemption price are real, in a certain way already clean from the inflationary effect. The index that is commonly used is the CPI or the HCPI. The CPI is a measure that examines the weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services, such as food and medical care. Moreover, the HCPI is a list of final costs paid by European consumers for the items in a basket of common goods. Why do we have to use them? Because that is how we protect ourselves against inflation. What does that mean? Here is a practical example. Suppose we put 1000 euro under the pillow today, and in a year's time inflation will have risen by 1%, so when I get them out I will always have 1000 euro, but I can buy fewer things that I could buy today with the same amount of money. To maintain the same purchasing power, I would have to make this 1000 euro yield 1%. This is because in our year, 1010 euros would be the equivalent in real terms of 1000 euros today because of inflation. Very simple, isn't it? Let's see another example. When we evaluate the return on an investment, we should always do so in real terms, that is, subtracting from the profit achieved in the increase in consumer prices. For example, if I invested 1000 3 years ago and the return obtained is 3%, in order to really know how much I have earned, I will have to suffer the loss of purchasing power that I have suffered during this period, that is to say, the losses due to inflation. Suppose inflation has risen by 1%, my real return would be around 2%. Now, I guess it's all clear. Let's see the behavior of British indexed bonds. We have taken for example the British one, due to analyze the effects of Brexit on the inflation and on the inflation-linked bonds. As we can see at the beginning, given that there was high inflation and high interest rates, the prices were very high. In the second moment, we have that the decrease in the inflation and in the interest rates allowed prices to be lower. This is given by a more political stability in the UK. In the last period, we have very low inflation but very high price. That means that there are low interest rates too, caused by the instability of the country in the last month.
Now, what is an inflation swap? It is a contract used to transfer inflation risk from one party to another through an exchange of cash flows. In an inflation swap, one party pays a fixed rate cash flow on a notional principal amount, while the other party pays floating rate linked to an inflation index, such as the consumer price index. Which are the most used? There are no cash flow plays until the maturity of the swap contracts. Let's take an example. Daniel wants to invest in the French market, but he thinks that inflation will increase and don't want to lose his benefits or purchasing power. Lisa has not the same opinion,
so they are going to enter in an inflation swap contract where Daniel pays a fixed rate and Lisa pays a CPI rate as posted rate over 1 year.
Finally, at the end of the year, Daniel will pay only the fixed rate, for example 3%, and receive the inflation rate in exchange. The CPI was above 3% for some months, so Daniel was right and was protected against inflation over the transaction. Here is a Bloomberg chart with CPI index and inflation swap 10-year zero coupon. There is always 3 months lag to collect the data of the countries and make the CPI of that month. We can see that the CPI index is close to 2% at the end of the 2018 year for French inflation.
Now let's see the difference between linked bonds and swap inflation. The first one is traded on exchange market and counterparties generally are countries. The second one is traded normally on OTC markets and counterparties are unknown, so the first one is probably safer in terms of counterparty risk. We hope that you have enjoyed our video. Good luck and may the force be with us!